All right, we are live, and it appears we are actually live on Rumble. So Rumble's working today. That's a good start.
Rumble's going to be overwhelmed when Tucker comes on Rumble in a month or so. It brings us 30 million viewers to Rumble. With they'll be like Russell Brand will be on Rumble, and then Tucker will be on Rumble. Glenn Greenwald,
Crowder
will be on Rumble. It's just going to be Rumble Stillskin. I mean, this thing's going to blow up. I don't know where he's going to go other than Rumble. I mean, in theory, in case anybody hasn't heard, sometimes, between me and Eric, I haven't spoken to him since the Friday show. So we don't talk as often over the weekend, but unless I talked to you, did I talk to you? No.
Yeah, you did a little bit. I don't know.
Right. But you were going shopping, you were doing something or other. But the reality of it is we have to cover the news as it explodes. So before we get into Madeleine Duncan Brown, which we will, we just wanted to address the Tucker thing because it just happened. So it would be bad for us not to address it. And the question is, where is Tucker going to go? I put up a thing on Twitter yesterday, which seemed to grow some legs about Trump and Tucker as VP, and I called it TNT.
It's dynamite.
TNT. And in one move, Trump could have a successor and what I call impeachment insurance. Plus, I would pay any amount of money to watch Tucker debate Kamala Harris on a stage. So it's like three things if he decides to go for the VP. It's one of these things that would be a slam dunk. And then I added on a little later on, an hour later, about RFK Jr. being the Attorney General, following in his father's footsteps, because this quixotic quest to get the Democratic nomination is absurd. I mean, let's face it. God bless the guy. I hope he gets on a debate stage now that they've canceled debates. The Democratic primary debates have been canceled. Where does he go? Where does Robert F. Kennedy Jr. go with his caravan of issues, many of which a lot of us support? So, does he just keep going on YouTube? Does he go on people's shows? Does he go on Tucker's show? Yes, he did. Well, that's gone. Where does he go now to get his message out?
Question: were the debates canceled before or as Biden announced his running for
No, it was 2 days ago they canceled the debates.
Okay, so it was primed up so he could announce yesterday, same day as Tucker leaving Fox, right, which overshadowed Biden because it was kind of like, oh, he is? Oh, okay.
Well, they're more concerned with Don Lemon, the crotch grabber, Blind Lemon Jefferson, the crotch grabber, who apparently was fired or is suing
he was
CNN.
Fired. He was fired.
Right, but he's suing CNN now. He's lawyering up. I understand that Tucker has retained an entertainment attorney and litigator. So I don't know what the status of his $10 million a year contract, which I think was relatively recent, like 2 years ago, right? When they created Fox Nation.
That's all he's getting? God, that's cheap. I think that like Maddow and Lemon and them were getting like $20 or $30 million.
I'm not sure what the perks were, other than they allowed him to do the budgets for those many documentary series. So that may have been one of the perks, Eric. He's done like 35 documentaries on these subjects. That might have been the budgets as opposed to the extra $10 million. So I don't know. I don't know the context of his deal, but to be unceremoniously acts like that without a reason, he does have a case.
Yeah, I have no idea. It was a good day for Don Lemon, though, because if you don't want to be humiliated, have somebody much bigger and more important leave the network the same day. So people will be like, Don, what? Now, when did Don leave? Was it before Chris Cuomo or after? You can already see that in 2 years.
Well, let's use the Chris Cuomo model. What did he do?
The funny thing about Chris is he got fired for standing up and hooking up his brother, which the network encouraged him to do when his brother was, the new hot thing during COVID. But as soon as he had his other problems, not COVID, with females, then, Cuomo. Yeah, Chris, got to go. Sorry.
It's amazing how many problems females are causing. Don Lemon, female. They're saying a female at Tucker, a female at Cuomo, a female at the other Cuomo. At what point are these females held to account? Where you have to do something formally, you have to file a grievance with the HR department, or you have to file a grievance with the police department. Something. I mean, these charges go back years. Not to mention the Trump case that's starting today. He didn't show up, of the woman who said he raped her in the Tryon department at Bloomingdale's.
Of course, we didn't say that word. We'll say the R word.
Oh, the R word. He worded her many years ago in the Tryon room at Bloomingdale's, which is, of course, his MO. He's done this with hundreds of women. Bloomingdale's, Kmart.
Well, like coincidentally, back to New York, statute of limitations completely ran out, but then they had a new law that was taken into effect. Them and what was it, California? So that way, Romeo and Juliet, you could sue on 40, 50, 60-year-old movies.
But it's only in this little niche, not for everything else. Just this one little niche where powerful executives or powerful actresses can take on a Charlie Rose or Garrison Keillor or any number of cats who have disappeared from the face of the earth. I'd love to do a documentary of all the deplatformed people and give them their day in the sun in one documentary. Like, what's your story? What have you been doing? Where are you now? That kind of a thing. But that's a subject for another day.
Right, and this leads right into, we're going to talk about
That's what. Into Madeleine Brown. That's kind of where I was going with this thing. Madeleine Duncan Brown. I always thought, and I've never really drilled down until recently, I always thought she was kind of trampy, kind of hoary, kind of slutty, but that came from the LBJ opposition of her media. And once you start to examine in her book, her claims and her story, you get an entirely different picture, ladies, of Madeleine Duncan Brown. And I, for one, I mean, while I thought, she was not like Oswald's girlfriend, I thought that many of her claims were fallacious regarding LBJ. But that being said, when you begin to drill down, you begin to see a lot of truth in what she was saying and writing about in her book, Texas in the Morning, which is a saying she says from LBJ, who would get up in the morning and say, "I love Texas" in the morning after getting out of bed with her, which is where the phrase comes from. Anyway, so yeah, I think this is her at like 19 or 18 years of age. Comes from a well-to-do background, not a chick, a girl who I thought was from the other side of the tracks. That was the impression that was given out in numerous articles over the years. This was a woman that he had a relationship with from 1948 to 1967, almost 20 years.
Just pretty long, even for a guy who, has gone through so many. He apparently had some feelings towards her.
And well, the odd thing about it is her unending love for this man. It's almost pathological. He can never do wrong by her. And to his death and her death, she claimed that she loved him madly. He was the love of her life. Now, she does marry a soda jerk. She does marry a soda jerk who she went to high school with, who was also the love of her life, which is this guy, James Brown. Not to be confused with the singer. James Glenn Brown was a soda jerk who served on the Nimitz. He was fighting in World War II, and I think he got what they call battle fatigue back then, but now called PTSD. He ends up in a vet hospital. He marries her right out of high school, but then goes and fights in the South Pacific aboard I think the USS Nimitz, if I'm not wrong. And then he gets battle fatigue and alcoholism and ends up in a mental institution. She divorces him in 1955, but she gets has one kid with him, but he's paranoid schizophrenic and the marriage is estranged for many years. Legally, she gets divorced in 1955. But it's done way before that, according to her, for what it's worth.
Now, this is her paramour at the time, who actually looked a bit like of a 40s movie star.
Yeah, no,
Wow.
that's why I said to you, there are photos. You're right, Eric. You're right. There are photos of now. Keep in mind, he's 6'5", 6'4". He has power. He has access to money. He lives large. He's a big politician, well connected. He's a ladies' man, and according to all of these women, very, very aggressive sexually. Now, according to her, she says that he would tie her up and whip her and use pearls in some capacity that she doesn't. She's very, very expressive in the book as to their sex life. I won't get into it here, but she is not prudish about her explaining what they did together over many, many years of having a sex life.
Wow. Well, the book is on Locals, folks.
Well, no, but it's only for the paying members of Locals.
That is correct, but it is there. Every salacious detail.
The book is out of print, and it's about $390 on book sources. So the PDF that I put up with Eric's help is on Locals for Locals members, which is about $5 a month. It's not going to break you. In fact, you could join for a year and still make out $200 with the book. So it is a very, very interesting book. What part of the takeaway from the book is she knows everyone in Dallas and everyone knows her in Dallas. This is not a lie or an exaggeration. She is a high power, again, going against what I had heard. She's a powerful media executive at a company called Glenn Advertising in Dallas as a media buyer. And she's tied into LBJ's TV station in Austin. And she works through a guy named Kellum, who is the guy who runs the station for LBJ, the one station that's in Lady Bird's name out of Austin that becomes the only station, and it's kept that way by chicanery by LBJ and his handlers to avoid any competition in Austin, Texas, despite the population rules of how many stations you're supposed to have based on population, or some FCC metric involved in that they should have had 2 or 3 stations, but only had the one for many, many years. And you people from Austin who were born there know what I'm talking about, having the one station there. I forget the name of it. It's KBT something, or it's KBDC. And she works with this guy, Kellum, to buy advertising and deal with advertising. So they would have a bunch of parties. And in 1948, they had a party at the Adolphus Hotel in Dallas. And she is then introduced. It's the party that they're having, by the way. They have parties as a TV station. But the party that she meets him at is a party celebrating his 1948 election to the Senate. And these parties,
landslide, his landslide.
Yes, these parties go on for months. And these cats at the party are like George Brown from Brown and Root, the Brown brothers, later becomes Halliburton, later becomes run by Dick Cheney. All of these guys are at these parties, including Sid Richardson, who dies in 1959. Clint Murkison is there, and later on we'll discuss the party at Clint Murkison's house. By the way, his seamstress, who was an Irish woman that we're going to talk about later, May Newman, pronounces it Murchison, and she worked for them for 32 years and worked for his first wife, who went by the name Murchison. She went by the name as Clint's last name, and she pronounces it as Murchison. So I've been castigated for saying Murchison, but I've heard it both ways. So get off my back. Because there's video that I've seen of the Irish seamstress talking about a guy named Jules Pfeiffer, not to be confused with the cartoonist Jules Pfeiffer, but a black chauffeur who apparently drove J. Edgar Hoover to the party at Clint Murkison's house the night before the trip to Dallas, night before the Dallas assassination. So anyway, that's a little bit later down the road. She goes to the Adolphus Hotel, where this guy, LBJ, puts the key to his room in her hand and says, "I'll see you later." And indeed, he does. I think this is the Adolphus here on the side there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So she goes up to his room, And such is the beginning of their almost 20-year relationship.
Did he say, "Hey, move over"? This is no.
No,
this is your senator. This is your senator.
He would later do that as president. But getting back to Brown, Madeleine Duncan Brown, she knew Jack Ruby very well. She went to the Carousel Club with her co-workers on numerous occasions, drank there like anybody would who was in that business district, Eric. She knew Jack Ruby. She said Lee Harvey Oswald. She saw him at the Carousel Club. She knew Mac Wallace very well. This woman knows a lot where a lot of the, she knew Billy Saul Estes really well. Billy Saul Estes is the one who called her on the phone and told her that Mac Wallace was dead, that they had wasted, quote unquote, from Billy Saul Estes, they had wasted Mac Wallace. This is from her saying that Billy Saul Estes called her. Now she knew Clint Peoples, the Texas Rangers captain who had investigated Billy Saul Estes and some of the shenanigans going into the Henry Marshall murder. She knew the Marshall family. She knows everybody. And the only reason she wasn't killed is because of what's produced in 1950, in December of 1950. That product, in many ways, keeps her alive. And that is the only son of Lyndon Baines Johnson, Stephen Mark Brown, in this case, who will later sue. Keep in mind, there's no DNA testing back then. So the paternity test is really hard to pull off. You have to have a lot of willing participants in this game here. But we're going to get into this in a little while. Let me just back up a little bit because of the Billy Saul Estes episode that we did and the Box 13 people making landslide Lyndon, the 202 votes. This is being an election season. I just want to get into that election again down there in Duval County and the Duke of Duval, which was George Parr. And many of my Texas friends are well aware of this. George Parr controlled not only Duval County, but he controlled two of the surrounding counties and was an extremely powerful man who, from what I've learned from Madeleine Brown, took 5 cents on every bottle of beer sold in the county. I mean, think about that money. He got a nickel from every bar and every grocery store for every bottle of beer sold in the county. I mean, that's a lot of money. And there was a guy, there was a guy named Smithwick. This is a side story. I didn't know about this. This is for all the aficionados of the assassination and the Epstein situation, which was on Rikers Island. Just getting back to that for a second. Sam Smithwick worked for George Parr, the Duke of Duval County, and helped them bring in the 201 extra votes, which gave landslide Lyndon the victory over Coke Stevenson. Coke Stevenson had been the governor. 1952, Sam Southwick was sitting in prison in Huntsville, Texas. Why was he sitting in prison? Because like Mac Wallace, he killed a radio announcer on behalf of George Parr. He murdered him. And like Mac Wallace, he was asked to do the time in Huntsville. This guy, Sam Smithwick, was muscle for the Duke of Duval County, George Parr. And 1948 is when they deliver the votes. That's when landslide Lyndon gets the name, or lying Lyndon, as other people will say. And in 1952, Sam Smithwick is in prison, and he is not getting the correct feedback that would allow him to have the belief that he's getting out of Huntsville prison soon. Okay, so he decides to write a letter to Coke Stevenson, the opposition, the guy who lost in the Supreme Court to LBJ. He decides to write a letter to Coke Stevenson and explain what happened in that election. That's not good to do, because it turns out that LBJ and Cliff Carter have a guy on their payroll who's on the Texas Board of Prisons. And the Texas Board, you have to have a guy. And Ed Clark, we're going to do an episode on Ed Clark, who is the lawyer, machine working guy in Texas for LBJ, has Pete Caulfield. Pete Caulfield was on the Texas Board of Prisons. And Pete Caulfield orders what they call in Texas death rangers. Now, I got to explain this to what death rangers are. Death rangers are when somebody is ordered to be eliminated in prison, and other prisoners are given the assignment with carte blanche, knowing there will be no penalty. It's an open contract on whoever they want to hit, not unlike what happened in Rikers Island with Epstein, Eric. This is an exact same mirror image of what went on. They call it Texas self-elimination or democratic self-elimination in Texas. Okay. Meaning Harry Carey. It actually has a name in Texas. So Sam Smithwick is targeted by the Death Rangers. And of course, is that Parr?
No, Sam Smithwick.
Oh, this is Smithwick. Okay. So Smithwick ends up with a thing, so you can't hear me, YouTube, around his thing, hanging from his thing, not unlike somebody in Rikers Island. In fact, when I read about it, I went, holy Christ, it's the same exact scenario. They had tried to do it, failed, moved him around, and then they did it. And his mistake was to go up against the LBJ political machine and try to undermine, literally 4 years later, in 1952, is when he meets his demise in Huntsville, Texas, in the prison. So the reason I mention this is because of the power of LBJ, the power of Ed Clark, the power of his control over Texas to even go into the prisons. And it's why Billy Saul Estes shuts his trap, because of what happens to Sam Smithwick and others. It's not alone. This is just one that I found out over the weekend. I said, oh, I never even heard of this story before. And I thought it was a fascinating power example of how the LBJ machine controlled the state of Texas. Now, could people have controlled New York that way? Yeah, we saw it in a Garfield assassination back in the day, Eric, 100 years before, when a guy who was a powerful political man in the state of New York was able to control. But that was many years before. But I guess Texas, being out there in the Wild West, had not caught up to New York in terms of corruption. And that's true for, in many ways, for Chicago, which is about 20 years behind New York, and we're putting people in prison. When Obama came to office, and he put the governor in prison, and he put Jesse Jackson Jr. in prison. So, this prison democratic power thing connection is that
Parr.
That's George Parr. Yeah, that's the Duke of Duval County. Yeah, but he also had a couple of counties right next door that were under his control. Anyway, so she knows all these people, Madeleine Brown. She knows them. She parties. She goes around. She's in the media. She goes to these media events. She goes to these social events. She goes to all of these events. Why? Because she works for a big advertising agency out of Dallas. And that, I wasn't aware of how much of her story is so true and makes sense now to me. I mean, put it this way. John Kinzer, the golf pro who was having sex with Josepha Johnson and Mac Wallace's lesbian wife, taught her how to play golf. Okay. She was in the same gun club as Mac Wallace, shooting with Mac Wallace. Okay. This is how all of these things intertwine, not because of some conspiracy, just because Dallas was a small town at that time. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing conspiratorial about this. It's just that people of a certain
stratum.
Yeah. Stratum are birds of a feather, and there's only so many places to go. So the situation with her and LBJ is that he trusts her to a certain degree. She has her tubes tied. I didn't know this either. After the birth of her son, because of complications she had with the second child, which is Stephen Duncan Brown, the son of LBJ. Now, he's a dead ringer for LBJ. Everywhere she goes, he's 6'4". He grows up. He's 220. I mean, he's a big giant guy. He's not involved in sports, but he becomes a champion shotgun shooter and champion rifle shooter, and gets all these awards as a rifleman. Oddly enough. Interestingly enough, Madeleine Brown and her friends, who were all part of this gun club, said that they all believed, and some of them were in Dallas during the time of the shooting, they believed the first shot came from the roof of the county records building. The second shot came from the grassy knoll. The third shot came from where you and I were standing, Eric, on the trestle above the triple overpass, and that the fourth shot came from the roof of the Dallas Texas School Book Depository building. Now, I have never heard anyone other than myself discuss the rooftop shooting, and I was astonished to read that Madeleine Brown and her gun club walked it through and believed that's where the four shots, what they profess, four shots came from. Remember that Weatherford, the deputy sheriff, was on the roof of the records building with a scope rifle. So there's some interesting things there that I learned over the weekend. Now, getting back to this group that endorsed LBJ, you've got Clint Murchison, who's a multimillionaire, and Sid Richardson. Sid Richardson, another millionaire, dies in 1959. He leaves, I didn't know this, the executor of his estate, he leaves the executive of his estate, co-executive of his estate, $2 million in 1959. And you know who that was? Big John Connolly. Big John Connolly gets $2 million out of Sid Richardson. And Madeleine Brown points out one interesting thing that I didn't know. She claims that Sid Richardson was a closeted gay and may have had something to do with Connolly, and is buried, like Clyde Tolson and J. Edgar Hoover, is buried near Clint Murchison, that they were lovers. These two Texas oil men. I went like, whoa, what is this now? I had to go back and reread this like 3 times. I'm going, what? And she says, yeah. She said, that's what, and then we're going to get into John Connolly. We're going to do an episode on Connolly, and we're going to explore their relationship. I didn't know he had a relationship with multimillionaire Sid Richardson. And Richardson and Murchison were friends with two people who showed up at Murchison's party that night, Clyde Tolson and J. Edgar Hoover. And they were, as we know, in some sort of a strange relationship, and are also buried side by side. So, again, you can't make this up. This is just all new to me.
So this John Connolly?
That's why I sent you that photo, because there are photos that I'm now looking at between, don't forget, LBJ had many homosexuals surrounding him that he browbeat and had power over, including Walter Jenkins, possibly Jack Valenti, and many others. From what we've seen. We also saw the gay underworld in New Orleans when we explored those episodes, including Clay Shaw and David Ferry and some of the other ones, Perry, Russo. Look at this. I mean, I'm looking at these now last night, and I'm going, what am I stumbling into here? What world is this?
It's a dear old relationship.
Well, he helped him steal the election down there in Duval County. And he gets the $2 million, John Connolly. He will later switch parties and work for another president a number of years later, who had some problems with the press years later. Here's John Connolly becoming what Richard Nixon called the closest and most interesting and friendliest guy in his cabinet. It's become Secretary of the Treasury, and Nixon and Connolly developed a special relationship. I don't know what that relationship was, other than Connolly being an extremely conservative Democrat in a state that the Democrats were moving more to the right, and
well, is that part of what they try to say, the Southern flip or switch or whatever that they?
Yes. And he's an example of the flip. I mean, he flips. He becomes Secretary of the Treasury, and the Republican becomes a Republican, and then runs for president as a Republican, Connolly, which we're going to get into that in the Connolly episode. But, yeah, I mean, Brown knew Jack Ruby well. Everyone knew Jack Ruby. He was involved in so many things. But she says something of interest. Like 5 days before the assassination, Jack Ruby already had the motorcade map and was in his club laughing about it and showing everyone the motorcade route. And she asked him where he got it, and he just cackled that he had friends, right? It's kind of weird. I mean, she says some very interesting things. The quotes that she has attributed to LBJ the night before the assassination. That's out of the Texas Hotel in Fort Worth, where I did a live remote from when I was down in Dallas and Fort Worth. She said, after tomorrow, the goddamn Kennedys will never embarrass me again. That's not a threat, it's a promise. Okay, we know that quote. We know that she was the originator of that quote because it was between the two of them. What I didn't know is he said, now I'm off to go party. And where does she say he goes to party? This is from the Murchison party the night before, right? This is not from the hotel. This is from the Murchison party dialogue. He leaves the Murchison party and he goes to Pat Kirkwood's Cellar, and the place that the Secret Service lost their guns and badges. She claims that LBJ went to the Cellar, Pat Kirkwood's place, down in Fort Worth after being at Murchison's. This is the Murchison house, I presume. It was brand new many years ago when they were first going there. And one of the people involved in this storyline that backs up Madeleine Brown is an Irish seamstress who worked for the Murchisons for over 30 years, and her name was Mary Newman. Now, Mary Newman said that the black chauffeur Jewel Pfeiffer went to the airport to pick up Hoover, and he was embittered that Hoover didn't tip him. He had to take Hoover back to the airport. Again, no tip. Hoover, no fan of black Americans, obviously. Maybe that was it. I'm not really sure. But she said, May Newman said also that all those people were at the party and that it was all the talk of the help. A lot of the scuttlebutt of who was at this party. John McCloy was at this party. Richard Nixon, who was there for the Pepsi-Cola bottling convention, was at the party. LBJ does a cameo at the party. People come and go at parties all the time. This attempt to put together a timeline of all these people at the party is kind of ridiculous, because not everybody stays 4 hours at a party, Eric, as you're well aware. People do hit and run. They go to parties. They go to the next party. They go to a club. They go to dinner. And that's apparently what was going on at the Murchisons that night.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, because there are people trying to say, well, he was elsewhere at this point, and then he was elsewhere at this point, so it's not possible. It's like, well,
right. That's a crock of shit. That's all a crock of shit. I don't know where he was, except that the help at the Murchisons all knew Hoover Bulldog was the code for Hoover. Bulldog was coming, and they knew. Look, if Nixon's at a party, it's not that you're looking at him all the time. There's a sense in a house the size of Shea Stadium. This house is the size of Yankee Stadium. There's people all over this house. You get this chatter saying, "Oh, Nixon's here." Really? Where? He's in there in that room over there. Okay, did I see him? No. But you know who's at a party. Who's at this party? Alec Baldwin's at this party. Really? Where? Oh, Duck. He's in there.
I'm sorry.
Duck and cover. So you get a sense of who's at these parties. Now, are they there all the time? No, they come and go. And apparently LBJ left and went to, from what I understand, the Cellar, Pat Kirkwood's place down in Fort Worth. Now, here's the thing, that there was another piece of breaking news, and we had breaking news last week with the Abraham Bolden story, which I am still can't believe what happened last week. In the Texas hotel, he calls her up from the Texas hotel. This is the morning in Fort Worth before they're about to go to Dallas for the motorcade. And he says, and this is new, I never heard this before. He says, that son of a bitch, crazy Yarborough, and that goddamn effing Irish mafia bastard Kennedy will embarrass embarrass me again. Now, this is on the phone to her the next morning. This is at 10 o'clock in the morning. I have never heard Yarborough's name mentioned in this dialogue before. This is because he believes Yarborough is going to sit where John Connolly ends up sitting. That's why he has the massive drag-out fight that Jackie Kennedy said was the loudest fight she ever heard her husband involved with LBJ. And screaming and yelling about John Connolly, as we did in a previous episode, not sitting in that seat in the limo. And here, that morning, LBJ says, crazy Yarborough, that son of a bitch, crazy Yarborough, will never embarrass me again. Now, why Yarborough? He ends up sitting next to him in his car because Yarborough was supposed to be sitting where John Connolly was sitting and get shot in the back from somebody on the roof of the Texas School Book Depository, straight down into the back, out of his chest, into his wrist, into his thigh, like John Connolly, who yelled, "They're gonna kill us all. They're gonna kill us all." Not he's gonna kill us all, not somebody shooting at us. They are gonna kill us all. And that was the famous quote by John Connolly as bullets rained down upon the limousine, according to the Secret Service agent sitting next to Greer in the front seat of the limo. Bullets rained down. Okay, getting away from that for a second, this quote from LBJ to her is similar to the one he says the night before. And it's clearly on his mind, and it's clearly something he tells her twice, but with slight alterations.
Amazing. I'm sure that LBJ was upset that his friend might be caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, here they went to LA. This is kind of weird. When they're in the Navy, they got leave for a week or two in the Navy before or after he got his Silver Star for being shot at in a plane over off the coast of Australia. Here they went to a professional photographer on Hollywood Boulevard right over here with those uniforms and had a series of photos made in their naval attire from a professional photo studio, which I always got a kick out of, that they would have the presence of mind in the middle of World War II. People are dying, getting blown to smithereens, but these two rat bastards are going to Hollywood on leave to get these photos made professionally. By the way, Madeleine Brown also believes Mac Wallace was the one who shot at General Walker and not Oswald. And she had information that Mac Wallace was the shooter. And she believed that Mac Wallace, when she saw him at the Elm Gun Club, I forgot the name of the Winchester Elm Fork Gun Club, if you can remember that name. She saw Mac Wallace practicing with a .22 pistol at that target range. So I'm not sure where that came into play. But he will be the enforcer for many years for LBJ in terms of getting rid of people.
All right. And this is Yarborough.
Interesting. Yarborough, who said the gunfire came from the ground, from the front, who said, "I've been in battle. I know the smell of gunfire. It doesn't go down from a building. It was at ground level. It's not going to come down from the 6th floor to my nostrils sitting next to LBJ." Ralph Yarborough, who refused to capitulate to the Secret Service demands that the shots came from the school book depository, refused, said they came from the ground, they came from the front, and would not be intimidated by the Secret Service, as a matter of fact, despite many attempts.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, this is an entirely tied-in group that is completely in bed with each other on so many different levels. You know, people say, well, how can they keep a secret? Well, they kept a lot of secrets up until then. This is not their first secret of keeping together as a group. You know what I mean? This 8F group and the oil people. Okay, so we cut to December, New Year's Eve, 1963. LBJ is already president, and she visits him at a hotel in San Antonio, Texas, the Granger, I think. I have that correct. I'm not familiar that well with San Antonio, but some people might be. She visits him, and she says in her book that everyone in Dallas believed that LBJ was involved in the assassination. So it's getting on her nerves, and she confronts him about it in the hotel room New Year's Eve, after having sex with him, after being tied to a bed, after being whipped. There's a break in the action with the score 3-2, and there's timeout, and they go into their respective corners, and they have a conversation. So the conversation includes, were you involved in the assassination? He flips out, starts screaming and yelling, and he says it was those goddamn oil people and rogue elements of the intelligence units. This is his answer. He then explains Kennedy's plan to do away with the oil depletion allowance. This is to her. This is by her admission. The oil depletion allowance, Vietnam. And in this screaming match, he flips out, almost rips the door off the bathroom. I'm not really sure what the door of the bathroom had to do with this, but he was so angry that anybody would imply that he had anything to do with this. And he said he was aware of it, had nothing to do with it, though, and was the beneficiary of it, according to her. So it's very telling so far. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very interesting.
I know. This is all relatively new to me, too. I mean, a lot of this stuff, I remember she didn't come out until, I want to say, 88, onto the public stage. Now, what happens in 88, her son sues for $10.5 million the LBJ estate for a paternity suit, right? So she does the talk show circuit. And that's where her story begins to surface in 88 and 89, Eric. And she is immediately hammered into oblivion by the LBJ power machine. You know what I mean? And that's where I got the thing in my head that she was a slut and a tramp and a hooker and all this other stuff. I had no idea. There was no way to check in 1989 as to what her bona fides were. And that was implanted by them pushing back. Now,
well, there's this guy apparently who has made a career out of.
He's a deep state operative. Yeah, that's Hainsworth, another real scumbag. Hugh Hainsworth, another deep state operative, Mockingbird reporter. Anyway, and as does Mac from the Texas School Book Depository Museum. He's another one who
he's in the article too.
He's in that article.
It's a collection. So
yeah. Oh my God, it's an all-star team. They got to take over the museum, the building, everything else. And so this is interesting. She gets hooked up by Kellum. Kellum comes to see her, and Kellum, this is even before, there's a guy named Ragsdale, Jerome Ragsdale. I'm going to get into this right now. Jerome Ragsdale is one of LBJ's attorneys, and he comes to see her after she gives birth. This is a rare photo, very rare, of Jerome Ragsdale. He comes to her and says, LBJ is going to take care of you and the kid. Don't worry about anything. He's going to put together a slush fund or a fund for your child. And in fact, she's taken care of, by Ragsdale. Ragsdale, she has no husband. They don't know who to put down as the father. So on the birth certificate, they put her schizophrenic, PTSD, Veterans Hospital husband as the father, but that's not true. And he doesn't look anything like that kid, like that father. But Ragsdale shows up, and Ragsdale works with Kellum. And Kellum, as I said, runs the TV station out of Austin, and Ragsdale's the attorney. And they put together a system to pay her over. It's KTBC is the name of the station. But they put together a system of money. Unfortunately, what happens? LBJ dies in 1973. These two guys die shortly thereafter. The two guys, and she goes to the safety deposit box in the Murchison Bank building. She has the key to the safety deposit box, right? She goes to the key with the box, and the box is drilled out from behind. There's no box. It has all the paperwork and bank accounts and everything else. It's been drilled out. Now, she doesn't know if it's Kellum who did it, or if Ragsdale did it, or both of them did it, or neither one of them did it. The fact of the matter is, she, with the death of Kellum and Ragsdale, and here's the letter. Yeah, there's a letter I found from Ragsdale to her, and we'll put this up on Locals after the show, saying that we're going to take care of you, and we're going to take care of your child. But after the death of Ragsdale and after the death of Kellum, she's in trouble. She's in trouble financially. And what happens? She almost gets killed. She's driving on the tollway across Dallas, and her car explodes. And there turns out there's a pipe bomb, blew her exhaust system off, and her car is blown to smithereens. Okay. She escapes with her life.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Because now I think this is Ed Clark. Now I think it's Ed Clark tightening up loose ends. So she gets a call that even Mac Wallace has been killed by Billy Saul Estes, who tells her this. Who kills Mac Wallace? We're not sure. But she now is broadsided with her son. With her son is broadsided in another car accident where she's totally disfigured, Eric. Her face is fractured in a million parts. Her son is almost dead. This is the same kid. This is Stephen Brown Johnson. She's almost killed. She wakes up. She's in a coma. Her face is completely fractured. And she begins to realize that this was something, this accident was not an accident. And she takes literally a couple of years to recover from this car accident and now has no money. There's no means to pay for the hospital bills. And finally, what happens in 1989 is the son sues the LBJ estate for $10.5 million. Now, what happens to the son? What happens to the son is he develops a rare bone cancer. A rare bone cancer, Eric. And there's the son with his mother. He's in his 20s here. He develops a rare bone cancer, and when he misses a trial date, a court date, because of the bone cancer treatment, they throw the case out. They seize the opportunity and go, what do you mean he's not here? What do you mean he's having bone marrow treatment for cancer? That's outrageous. We're throwing the whole case out, which is what happens to his paternity lawsuit against LBJ, and specifically against Lady Bird. Now, this woman, Madeleine Duncan Brown, apparently knows about all the other affairs of LBJ. She knows that he's seeing Alice Glass. She knows that he's got other secretaries. There's one that he impregnates, and it might have been the Jack Valenti baby. I'm not really sure which one she was referring to. But he was also bragging about the birth of his daughter's son, making Patrick Nugent Jr., making him a grandfather. And she found this very hard because he was talking about the extension of his lineage with the grandson. And he would not acknowledge this kid. He said, first of all, he acknowledged the kid in many ways, but he would not acknowledge the kid publicly. They did stuff. I'll give you an example. His first birthday, Stephen's first birthday, where is that? It's at the TV station and is broadcast live to Austin, Texas. The birthday of his son, not saying it's LBJ's son. He then joins the Boy Scouts at the age of 5 or 7, and LBJ pays for the entire Boy Scout troop to go to Austin from Dallas or Dallas to Austin, one or the other, as a troop. He pays for all that. He pays for the kids' birthdays. He pays for all this stuff, LBJ, and sends her flowers all the time and all this other stuff through Kellum, the station manager. So he does acknowledge all the time the existence of her son, but he doesn't want anyone to know about this. Now, that's going to lead me into it was the Menger Hotel in San Antonio, where she goes to meet him, and she brings Dale Turner with her. Now, who's Dale Turner? Dale Turner is her black nanny who has been taking care of the kids via Kellum for 10 years. The kids, Stephen is now, I presume, around 12, right? So this is now, he's vice president. This is 1961. So he's around 11 or 12, 61, 62. And she goes to meet him at the Menger Hotel in San Antonio. So he's 11, right? So they walk into the suite, and the black nanny maid comes with the 11-year-old, and LBJ and her lock eyes. And he says, "Get her out of here." And she says, "What?" He says, "Get rid of her." And she goes, "I can't get rid of her. She's been with me 11 years. LBJ is emphatic about getting rid of Dale Turner because she saw LBJ, the boy, and Madeleine Brown in the same suite at the Menger Hotel in San Antonio, Texas. So she says, "I can't get rid of her." I can't make this up. The next day, Dale Turner disappears and was never seen heard from, or got a letter from forever. 11 years, every day, with this kid, raising the kid as a nanny, was told to get rid of by LBJ and never came back, and she never heard from her again for the rest of her life. So the word is that, you know, this woman might have met a bad ending because of LBJ. Now, keep in mind, there's a guy, a governor, I think his name was Alan Shriver, is a Democratic governor from Texas. He believed and accused Lyndon Johnson personally. Is this Shriver, the governor? Yeah. He accused Lyndon Johnson of being involved in the death of Sam Smithwick in Huntsville, to his face. So very interesting. This is two gun Al, I guess, in that photo. But yeah, so anyway, so this woman, Dale Turner, disappears in 1961, a month before Josepha Johnson, LBJ's sister, dies under mysterious circumstances as well. So LBJ may have been cleaning up a lot of the loose ends in 1961 as vice president, because he's got coming up shortly, as you know, the Billy Silas scandal, the Bobby Baker scandal, the death of the Department of Agriculture guy, Henry Marshall. So there's a lot of stuff happening on the horizon. I think he was cleaning up some loose ends.
Crazy.
So anyway, this Madeleine Brown, who's had her tubes tied, continues to have sex with Johnson up until 1967, you know, where he's had a heart attack. He's about to die. He's had the massive heart attack. She continues to stand by her man and will not. She must have been madly in love with him. I've never seen anything like this, because in the book and in public and in interviews, she discusses his involvement in the Kennedy assassination and his, social foibles, but says, but I still loved him madly. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but I guess it's possible. I don't know.
Maybe she hated Kennedy and she agreed with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really understand the relationship that they had, unless she was just, she was 19 when she hooked up with him initially, and maybe it was just mad, crazy love. I mean, look, John Gotti had a wife. John Gotti's wife loved him, right? Al Capone had a wife. I mean, so
sure, somebody for everybody.
There's somebody for everybody, and there are people who turn. Isn't there like a Real Housewives of the Mob? Isn't that a show?
It's possible. I mean, There's Real Housewives, different places, and one of the Real Housewives, I think, is actually locked up. Just
right. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So she knew a doctor, Dr. Jack Barnett, who was Ruby's doctor and was her doctor, Dallas doctor, pretty well-to-do doctor. And he claimed that he didn't believe what Ruby told him, that he had been infected or sprayed with poisonous gas. This is a couple of weeks before Ruby died. Ruby claimed to have been sprayed or injected with poisonous gas. And they just said, well, that's a nutty thing to say. And then Ruby was dead. So I don't really know what the deal is with that, but we do know that there was another doctor that Jolly Juice showed up and injected him with something. So maybe, this was an attempt by Ruby to explain something. But even Ruby had gone public with the LBJ statement from the prison in Dallas, a jail cell. So when she asked him at the hotel on New Year's Eve, which I think might have been the Driscoll in Austin, she asked him if he was involved. This was the response he gave, this long-winded story blaming the oil guys and intelligence, rogue intelligence operatives. Could be. I don't know. He says he was aware of it, but benefited from it, couldn't stop it, had nothing to do with it. And that's been the story by a lot of even conspiracy people like Oliver Stone, who believe that he, knew about it, covered it up, was the beneficiary, but was not involved in the planning. I mean, that's convenient.
Yeah, I mean, hey, something's going to happen. You just hide out for a month at your place, or you fly over to Europe. He's the Three Monkeys, right?
Well, she was also tight with H.L. Hunt and that crew over there. So Ruby and Hunt mingled together, and they played cards together. Everybody apparently played cards together. Hunt was an addictive gambler who loved to play cards, and he would play with Richardson and Murchison like $100 a hand or $500 a hand or some crazy amount. But she said H.L. Hunt always dressed like a bum and drove beat up cars.
So he is one of those rich eccentrics from the South.
Right. She was given a phony husband named C.G. West, Charles West, by Kellum. And this guy posed as her husband until he self-deleted himself for reasons I'm not privy to at this time. But at the Murchison's house, you had Hoover, Tolson, Nixon, H.L. Hunt, George Brown, and I love that photo. That was my favorite photo of H.L. Hunt, like doing magic tricks. Which he did do. He was a big magic guy. I always wonder if this was one of his, sorcerer type. I'm going to make you disappear photos.
He might have helped somebody disappear.
I know.
So, oh my. So what ultimately happened with her after her 70s and on?
Well, she wrote this book in the 80s, and in the 90s she wrote this book, and then became involved, being interviewed by various conspiracy people as to her connection to this thing. Now she may, just like somebody else who claims to have been with Lee Harvey Oswald, she may have exponentially expanded her story, to sell her book. Apparently, this is a common thing, even to sell regular books. People expound and expand their story to. Were you with that guy? Yes, I was there with John Gotti at that time. I was, what I mean? And there's no way to prove one way or another that she was with him or not with him. But
he was in town. Oh, yeah, I saw him.
Yeah. So it seems that by most rational people, and this is, involved, that she had a long-term relationship with LBJ. I think that's fairly well established. As to all these other things, I don't know. I don't know. She may have stumbled into something. She obviously knew more than people originally gave her credit for. Let me just put it that way. I mean, for an affair for 20 years to last, she claims that Hoover, for LBJ to become vice president, Hoover, threatened LBJ with revealing that his son was born out of wedlock and was with Madeleine Brown. That's what she says LBJ told her. And why would he use this on LBJ? They were friends. Okay, what he wanted was for him to pressure the Kennedys to extend the mandatory retirement age so he wouldn't be forced out by the Kennedys. Now, to his credit, or not credit, LBJ does this when he becomes president. He turns 65 and he extends it for Hoover to stay on. And she claims that he threatened him with revealing the out of wedlock child if he didn't do his bidding, that he held this over LBJ's head. Could be.
Well, there's one more thing I saw in the book, but the person whom she felt LBJ reminded her of. I don't know if you got into that, but
oh yeah, what was that? Sandow.
Yes.
What was, dude? That was ridiculous.
She considered apparently that this was her Sandow, and
she called him Sandow. Yeah,
was the like this Greek god looking figure of the late 1800s, started bodybuilding and all that. So that was LBJ in her mind.
Well, we know that he had jumbo. Okay, let's give him some credit where credit is due. He's operating. He's 6'4". He's got jumbo. He's got a lot of women. And his famous quote, I had more women who fell off the table than JFK ever had in his life. So he would belittle JFK's sexual proclivities by boosting his own. So I don't know, true or not. Even in our own series, we have stumbled onto the Douglas affair with the congresswoman from Hollywood. We Alice Glass. I mean, we've explored a number of these LBJ, or the ladies of LBJ, right, Eric?
Hell, you knew one.
Which one? Oh, yeah.
She told
Yes,
you.
that's right.
Kind of like
that's right. Yeah. Wow.
she implied to you that.
Yes. Oh, that is weird. I forgot about her. Yeah. Move over. This is your president, honey. Yeah. But Doris Kearns Goodwin. Yeah. Very interesting. But yeah, so this is another addition to our series on the ladies of LBJ. But I think it's just a little bit more detailed, because I would say that this is Madeleine Duncan Brown, was the #1 longest lady of LBJ over time. You know what I mean? And intimacy, that they had intimate conversations, that he did reveal stuff to her intimately, that he trusted her, that he, had Secret Service around him all the time when he was visiting her. They were outside the door of the hotel obviously after 1960. And as a senator, he was doing stuff with her also going back to 1948. So, and all through the 1950s, her attempt is, her son dies tragically of bone cancer. And then, she just spirals into a black hole at that point, the loss of her son. And it takes her years to recover from that depression. And then he passes away, obviously, in 1973, LBJ. So that was the end of their relationship. But, this is really one of the most in-depth ladies of LBJ, in my humble opinion.
And she passed in 2002, I believe, right?
2002. She lived a long life. Yeah, she lived a long life. I don't know. And she, as I said, this was an educated woman. Her son went to Texas A&M, this kid. And, I don't know what happened to the other kid. But this one, like I said, he dies of a rare bone cancer, tragically. And he'd been in the Navy. There's a weird story when she revealed in '89 that this was the son of LBJ. These Vietnam vets break down her door and go into her house looking for her deserter son, who they claimed deserted the Navy. And when in reality, he had gotten a discharge, totally paperwork was there. And some group of 4 or 5 or 6 Vietnam vets came in and broke her door down looking for her deserter son. Very weird story. It made no sense whatsoever. They said they had a warrant for his arrest and that they were MPs, but they were clearly Vietnam vets. I never really understood that whole story.
Wow, craziness.
Yeah, and he was in Bethesda Naval Hospital, the same place they did the Kennedy autopsy, by the way.
Okay, well, it's a little bit more craziness all the time, maybe.
Yeah, I wanted to get this story out because of the ladies of LBJ and to go into more detail as to how they interacted. And also, when I got into the Billy Saul Estes stuff, it opened the door to some of this Mac Wallace involvement, and also, this story about Sam Smithwick that kind of fell between the cracks of how LBJ operated even in prison. Not unlike some other people may have operated with people in prison here, doing things to them in Rikers Island. So
yeah, and there was even a picture of her with Billy Saul late in life. So I think they knew each other.
Oh yeah, no, they were very close. They were very close. There's no doubt about that. There's photos of them together. They spoke to each other. There's an interview. They were friends. They were definitely friends.
Well, awesome. Speaking of friends, though, we have some super chats that came in. And Don Davis agrees with you. Tucker Carlson, make America good again.
Right. What I'm saying, it's Trump and Tucker, TNT. Can anybody? Nobody seems to.
Well, he's not stealing it. He's helping.
Oh,
he's
no.
Hey.
No. I know, but I'm just saying it's a great bumper sticker. TNT 24. That's my new branding. TNT 24. And Robert Kennedy's Attorney General. What sweet karmic justice. To run the Justice Department is not anything to poo-poo for someone like himself. No. He's a lawyer. He's a righteous dude. Mm-hmm. I am not kidding about that Attorney General thing. I mean, they'll never do it because he would go after them.
Mm-hmm. But when he can be appointed into it, he doesn't have to get elected into it.
That's right. That's right. I mean, who is going to deny the son of the father who ran the Justice Department? It's a no-brainer. I think when the dust settles, we might see that happen. Hopefully.
Could be interesting. Yeah. Did anyone ever compare bullets from Tippit and Oswald and Jack Ruby?
Yes. I mean, don't forget, you've got automatic slugs that are in Tippett. They're placed there. They have the Oswald wallet is at the Tippett scene. I don't know if they match the Ruby Oswald bullets, but that was an automatic revolver, not automatic weapon, as reported by the Dallas detectives at the scene of the Tippett murder. And Ruby's was this snub-nosed .38 police special.
All right. Okay. Women can't resist Jumbo.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Who am I to say? I mean, he has a whole box of toys that he brings with him that he plays with, and you know, I don't know what his sex life was like, but she describes it in pretty poetic, flowery prose. Let me put it that way. The book Texas in the Morning, if you want to become a member of our outlaw society called Locals, go to unstructuredlocals.com and you could become a member for a stinking $5. I think you could join for free and not do anything.
Can follow for free, and there's a lot of stuff that you'll still enjoy, and we do appreciate it. So
right. I told everyone to quit Fox Nation, take the $5 from Fox Nation on Twitter last night and join unstructured.locals.com. I don't know if anybody did, but there were people who said they were going to join.
Nice. The more the merrier. Cool Niagara with a really nice super chat and no question. So I thank you very much. Let me see. Someone unseen with Australian $20. I'm not surprised by any of LBJ's shenanigans. The man was devoid of morals. Love the series, gents. Greetings from Sydney, Australia.
Wow. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. What is it? It's 5 days later in Sydney, Australia. That's how far away it is.
Well, we have that image of the beast in Australia, right?
What
when
beast?
He got pelted.
The car. Yeah, the car got pelted. Yeah, the car was rebuilt, and he flew it to Australia, and was inundated with paint balloons by Australian anti-Vietnam War protesters.
True. And someone unseen, if you like this episode in the series, hit the like button. Please do hit the like button. There's another button that I welcome you to check out down below.
What?
Well, yeah.
Hold on.
It's buried. Hold on. There it is. That one.
That one. Every time you subscribe, angels get their wings. Hold on. There's a break in the action when it's time for Heroes of the Blues. Today is Leroy Carr and Scrapper Blackwell, a double-barrel Heroes of the Blues. Looks like Scrapper is playing a National Steel guitar right there. I'm not sure if people know what a National Steel is, but that seems to be the guitar he's playing. The Indianapolis-based team of Carr and Blackwell popularized the piano guitar blues duet before Carr's death ended their collaboration. They made over 100 sides between 1928 and 1935, including the famous How Long Carr, one of the first bluesmen to use an understated vocal delivery. Born in Nashville in 1905, Francis Blackwell was born in 1903, learned the guitar in childhood, eventually developing a brilliant tone based on a delicate vibrato blended with string snapping. So today, Leroy Carr and Scrapper Blackwell are your Heroes of the Blues. There you go, Eric.
All right. Sparty Matt, awesome episode. I used to expect it further down the list of characters and dots. The less interesting.
No, quite the opposite. Yeah, because the more dots I have, they connect. Like this whole thing about Sam Smithwick, if I just saw that by itself early on, I wouldn't know what it meant. But now I understand where the governor of Texas is accusing LBJ of murder in 1952. I did not know that, Sparty.
Crazy. Lazy Sea Ranch, 1999.
Lazy Sea Ranch.
And look at this. We covered this guy before, and now he's here with a super chat. Smedley Butler.
Oh, that's the third. Prescott Harriman, Standard Oil, Zapata Oil. I don't know what 322 means, but
I'm not sure, but thank you. All right, and Al Gonzalez has a request.
Oh, come on, Bobby. You don't know anymore if it's Bobby Baker or Bobby Kennedy.
That's true. You just do it twice as often.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter Cachetto, with super
He's
sticker.
been on before, right? This guy.
Yeah, he's never asked a question on here.
This is the guy never asked a question. That's cool. That's cool.
He does talk to me on locals on occasion. And let me see. Sparty Matt again. I can't believe I'm just now seeing this for the first time. Are the icons next to the name or for memberships glowing? There's a little icon next to the $5 there. That means that you're a subscriber to it. And in YouTube, there are little agents because the CIA has infiltrated our chat. So all members have different levels of a little Secret Service or CIA agent.
He's not even kidding. Who knows what's going on with it?
Yeah, that's right.
Usual. Holbrook, you got to get it together, Holbrook. This is becoming a thing with you. Whoever Holbrook is.
Good point. Anyway, so
just pointing out what Eric was saying about the PDF of the books. These books are out of print copies that I supplied the locals membership from my collection. And I don't know how many there are at this point, but there are screenplays in there. There are PDFs of books that some of these books are hundreds of dollars. And believe me, I have to print out the PDFs so I can put them into a binder to read them. I'd much rather have the money to buy the books, but they're so pricey. Like I was showing Eric, the Texas in the Morning was how much, Eric?
I don't know. It fluctuates, right. 160, 200. I don't know.
So I try to use the PDFs wherever possible. So anyway, you're free to use them if you join locals.
Absolutely.
You can download them, play with them, pass them on to your friends, make a hat out of them, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Let me see. I got Pasha who sent a tip. He did another Hero of the Blues, but I'm having problems getting that to come up.
Okay.
He's doing his own. But that's a cool thing. We have a private chat in local. So there's memes that go in there, but problem is when I do it, it's going to crash the microphone. So
right. There's trouble. Definitely trouble.
But everybody check that out.
Check it out. Check it out.
Tony
we don't
Bug.
know. You got another guy? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm got a handful here. No, Tony Bug sent a $5 tip.
What?
Jay Egger and Murchison went to the Hotel de Charo in La Jolla, California, for the race season at Del Mar for many years. They were very close.
That is true.
Huron Trader sent a tip and says it keeps getting deeper.
I know. This is crazy. I mean, years ago I got into this, and I got into it because I wrote an LBJ script, and have to now look back at a lot of my notes when I got into this thing. This is from, I want to say 6 years ago, before we had the channel. But now even I'm finding out stuff. The relationship between Connolly and Sid Richardson is really fascinating to me. I didn't know he got $2 million out of the Richardson estate. That's kind of what put Connolly. It may have separated Connolly from LBJ. He didn't need him anymore after 1960. Interesting. We're going to do an episode on Connolly in a couple of weeks.
Awesome.
I'm waiting for some books. If you want to send a donation on Venmo for the Connolly books, don't let me stop you. Who am I to stop you from sending me money for John Connolly books? Knock yourselves out.
This is very, very true.
Yeah.
Speaking of money, Gary W sent a $5 tip saying,
Gary, way to go.
322 refers to skull and bones.
Okay.
I didn't know that. Otto sent a tip saying he's a glowy. I'm not surprised. I think Otto harasses me on grill streams, and I think he definitely probably is a glowy.
Not all glowies are bad people, Eric.
No, I support glowies, especially when they pay me.
Do you have those photos? I wanted to see if you have those photos of Mae Newman and the baby, Mae Newman, the seamstress. I don't know if you have that, or the baby picture of Johnson's kid. The boy picture or no?
I may.
I just wanted to show the Irish seamstress who I really believed about the Murchison party.
I don't know if I have her.
Okay,
but I do have him. I mean, there's different shots. I just didn't bring him. Like that's him as a teenager,
right? But there's one where it's just a facial shot of him as a baby. It kind of looks like a baby LBJ. Or we'll find it on locals. We'll put it up on locals.
Yeah, here's the
What do you have there in your storage warehouse? Oh, that's hard to see. Yeah, but
Well,
that's the one. That's the one there on the right with the bow tie, Eric. That's one of them that looks a little close. All right. Well, we'll
It's in
see.
there,
There's a
there.
couple. There's a couple where he looks just like LBJ. It's just scary. But I think that's why LBJ. Yeah, that one I kind of looks. Oh, yeah. If you scroll down, you'll see LBJ, right?
Yeah.
If you scroll down a little further.
Well, up is LBJ's
Up.
right
I
there.
meant up.
There's
Right.
LBJ,
Yeah, okay.
and that
All
was
right.
him.
Right. Okay.
Richard Brother.
Yeah. Just to emphasize that again.
Sure. Got thrown out. BCF, very heavy tip here. Thank you very much.
On mysterious deaths, like of just random people. I like that. Oh, you mean like from
Like your friend's book,
Richard Belzer?
Yeah, we kind of are doing that.
We're doing it.
as
We
it
are
goes.
doing it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would be hard to do because each of those deaths, are complicated deaths. I mean, even the death of Mac Wallace, again, another Texas self-deletion, quote unquote, was ruled a Texas self-deletion. It turns out that Wallace's car outside of Houston, Texas, was driven off the road. Again, single car accident. Wallace's hands had scars on them from, apparently, according to Clint Peoples of the Texas Rangers, of handcuffs on his corpse. And the car was taken away and squished into a box in a auto demolition yard. So
don't they always have carbon monoxide somehow tied into?
Yeah. Well, Wallace, unfortunately, Wallace didn't, because Wallace was the guy who used to do that. So he just had the handcuffs. Wallace, God knows how he ended his life. They put him behind the wheel of the car with handcuffs.
He got nervous. He didn't want to quit. He wanted to make sure he was in for the ride, so he handcuffed himself. I'm sure.
And then he put the hose into his own mouth. Oh, by the way, there's a 4-part series on Showtime, docuseries called Spectre, about Phil Spector, which I highly recommend. I watched it this past weekend, about the trial, the murder of Lena Clarkson, and really well done, high budget reenactments, incredible footage of Phil Spector in the courtroom, LAPD trying the case after failing with Robert Blake and OJ. They said, we got to get this guy. And but the whole life of Phil Spector is in this 4-part docuseries on Showtime. Highly recommended.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, got a tip here. I don't know what it is. Every time I hear "Come on, Bobby," I feel the need to tip.
Oh, come on, Bobby. Come on.
And then Basil Beshkov. Let's go, Brandon.
Did you see how Alec Baldwin was handing the shotgun to someone on day one of the new Rust shoot in Montana? What is now that then there was 5 guys trying to get him on a horse today?
Well, look, at least it's an improvement.
Yeah.
Because if it did go off, he would be the one taking it. So
because it was pointed at him.
Right. So I'll just take that as a win.
But I'm saying here after everything else about handling the gun with the gun wrangler and the AD, he's handing a shotgun butt first to another extra on the movie himself.
Right.
Wow.
Let me see. Carl Burkhalter, in 1570s, first governor and lieutenant governor of Nuevo Leon, were burned for being Jews. It borders Texas.
What?
Next generation were on the Rio Grande before New Amsterdam, Chicago behind, not Texas.
How about I think the 11th vice president of the United States was Dallas, who founded Dallas, Texas. I didn't know that Dallas goes that far back as a city, and vice president of Dallas. Right.
And Pasha, I appreciate that. I'm having problems bringing up the picture. It crashes the session. So it's not a size issue. It's the matter of the chat and my microphone going out and things when I mess with it. So I do appreciate it. I just can't pull them right now.
Okay. That's your final answer.
Well, it's like, I don't want him to have to keep tipping and it's I can't handle it. Let me see. Okay, the Canadian Owl sent a tip. Mark, you brought up John Lennon, Jose Sanchez Perdomo was chief of police during Cuban presidents Carlos Prio's regime. Perdomo went into exile after Fidel Castro took power and was recruited by the CIA. Working from CIA Miami station in the early 60s, he recruited most of the members of Operation 40. He was working as night doorman at the Dakota on December 8th, 1980, when John Lennon was killed, and told the police that Mark Chapman was the assassin. There's a book that's coming out. I know you said something.
There's a book that just said there was, I like tipping. There's a book coming out, and this is going to be interesting to look at this book. They said there was a second gunman in the shooting of Lennon. It's going to be tough to convince me, but I'll read it.
But it is interesting if there was actually a CIA tie into the building. Because,
well, Mark David Chapman apparently, is no normal cat. That's for sure.
And we know that the CIA and FBI did not have any love for John Lennon.
Watch the documentary, United States versus John Lennon, if you want to see an interesting documentary, how they were trying to get him out of the United States. And if I was Nixon, I'd want to get him out of the United States too. He was organizing concerts to get my friend John Sinclair out of prison, the so-called 10 for 2 series. John was sentenced to 10 years in prison for 2 joints. John Sinclair, that is, not John Lennon. Mm-hmm. And John Lennon is doing a series of concerts to get Sinclair out of prison. Sinclair, of course, the manager of the MC5 and one of the members of the so-called White Panther Party out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, which was a left-wing, gun-toting, white side party to the Black Panthers. So there's a lot of connections there. So not that that's in the documentary. That's just my knowledge from John of what was going on. But yeah, John Lennon was public enemy number 1 to a lot of people in Washington.
Yeah, for sure. You know who is loyal?
Who?
Oswald.
He is?
That's right. Madeleine Brown has nothing on Oswald. Oswald is so loyal that Oswald is actually in the Netherlands with a baseball team.
What?
And watching pitching practice and everything else. Oswald appears everywhere in the world.
Oh, is that true? He's shown up around the world?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And okay, I have one more tip that came in on locals. Gary W., the Secret Service agent Jerry Parr shot Reagan in the limo. That's why there's a blackish rim around the bullet wound.
That was kind of on film. That's a tough one to sell. But what about these glasses that Ziggy is selling? Maybe you want to give that a little.
Yeah, definitely.
Where'd you go?
I have to go. I'm like a bartender. I've got, go.
Hey, Connolly. Where'd you go, Connolly?
There you go.
Oh, what's that?
Team Oswald, speaking of which.
Let me tell you something, folks. November 22nd is right around the corner. Nothing could be a better gift on the 60th anniversary of the assassination of JFK than Team Oswald drinking glasses.
That's right, because
call me macabre, but I'm going to be drinking from those glasses on November 22nd myself.
For sure. But yep, glasses of all shapes, sizes, etc. Next up, we have Freeform Friday.
Right, but before you get into that, where are we with the subscriptions? Are we at 70,000 yet? I saw the corner of my eye the other day.
No.
That's a sad story. That's a very
not yet, but we might get there soon. I think we're at.
Can you people please help us get to 70 and 100,000 so we can begin to get guests? We can't really book guests when you don't have under 100. I couldn't care less about what the number is, but it will allow us to.
Publicists do.
Right, I don't care, but they do. So if you can help us get to 100,000 subscribers, I think they give us a free T-shirt or some sort of a trophy or something. But it can open up new horizons for the show.
We're at 69,545.
What? Okay, well that's something. So
we may be hitting that soon. Who knows? Maybe we'll hit it by Freeform Friday.
Oh my God!
On that note, I will be in Washington D.C.
What?
On Friday?
What?
So I'll be attending this remotely.
Okay.
And I might have a guest with me for the show too. So we'll see what happens.
All right, Hunley.
But on that note, please check out Locals. People are asking about the book. There is a area on Locals. If you're a member, you just go to content, Then you go to PDFs, and you can pick a playlist, or you can scroll through all the PDFs and then find the particular PDF.
Hunley knows. He knows how to do it.
I do know how to do it.
I don't know where it is, but Hunley knows where it is. You can email Hunley saying, "Where the F is this book, Hunley?"
Or you can use the search button. There's a search box at the top, and you can type in Madeleine Brown,
right,
and it'll probably come up too in the post.
I love Texas in the Morning. Remember, that's from LBJ.
Perfect. And we will see everybody come Friday.
Okay, fair enough.